The miracle doctor won't be a kept man. Chapter 151. The situation seemed peculiar. Yvonne was not afraid of death, so why would she be afraid of him? Moreover, she gave the impression of still waters, as if nothing in this world mattered to her. She was no ordinary woman. Women were truly a mystery. Congratulations on winning the bid, Miss Snow. Isabel was the first to step forward and offer her congratulations. Refusing to be outdone, the others extended their good wishes one after another. Snow felt like she was in a dream. She had not expected to succeed at all. She sneaked a peek at Kiran, slightly moved. This jerk was quite the extraordinary man. Collecting her thoughts, she thanked everyone politely. Isabel and the male judge then rubbed their hands and gazed at Kiran with pitiful, pleading eyes. Kiran knew they meant to ask him for help in curing their illness. The Peace Echeverria pill's poison is a chronic virus that needs to be eliminated bit by bit. I'll prepare an antidote for you when I get back. You can pick it up at Xander Corporation. Thank you, Mr. York. Thank you so much. Isabel and the judge were immensely relieved. Ignoring them, Kiran left Snow to the bidding procedures and moved over to the window. The poison from the Peace Echeverria pill was nothing serious, but some people just did not appreciate their lives until they encountered some sort of suffering. That was how it was for people like Isabel. Only when they were dealt a painful blow would they respect and obey Xander Corporation. Kiran leaned out the window and saw Yvonne opening the door of the Rolls-Royce Dawn and getting in. Right before she climbed in, she turned her head and glanced upstairs, as if she knew Kiran was watching her, and flashed him a sincere, calm, and cheerful smile. Kiran was stunned. What was going on? Why was she not angry? He had been baffled when she had offered to drive his car that morning. And now he was even more perplexed that she had handed her company over to him so readily. This woman was a puzzle to him. Because he could not read her at all, his curiosity for her increased. Half an hour later, Snow signed the contract. She left the conference room with Kiran. As soon as they entered the elevator, she threw her arms around him, a happy smile lighting up her face. The whole day was like a dream to her. She thought her hopes of winning the bid had been dashed, but it had eventually turned out in her favor. Ahem. Kiran cleared his throat, staring at their bodies pressed together. Snow realized that she had lost her composure, but her pride was triggered the next instant. Why was he complaining when the most beautiful woman in Bayville had willingly thrown herself at him? Tesk! She pushed him away. Our bet isn't valid anymore. What? Why? Kiran asked anxiously. I hugged you just now, but you didn't like it. In that case, I don't like it either, Snow said matter-of-factly. Kiran refused to accept her explanation. Hey, you're breaking your promise. We had a deal. A deal? Where? Snow waved the contract she had just signed with the Health Insurance Bureau. Did we sign a contract? First, you. Kiran was at a loss for words. It only counts if it's in black and white. If you don't have a contract, it doesn't count. Snow's expression was smug. Fine. Forget it. Kiran waved a hand in resignation. Good! Snow was gleeful. I have our marriage certificate anyway. That grants me full rights to sleep in your bed. Kiran suddenly grinned. You pig. Snow hurled the contract in his face. He sidestepped her attack. The elevator doors opened just in time, and he darted out of her reach. Snow did not really mean to hit him as she was still in a euphoric state. No matter what, Kiran had undoubtedly contributed to her success. Kiran, we're having dinner at 6 o'clock this evening. With whom? Kiran stopped in his tracks and asked curiously. Snow rolled her eyes at his question. Didn't you send a message to Omnipotent Group this morning asking for breakfast money? Kiran nodded quickly in response. Oh yeah, those women are much more generous than you. They were all so eager to send me money. Is it because they think I'm handsome? And he clamped a hand over his mouth mid-sentence because Snow's face had turned as black as thunder. I'll be there. Kiran turned on his heel and ran. He was not going to stick around and wait for Snow to explode. Chapter 152. Kiran left the car to Snow. After leaving the hotel, he headed straight to the bank. He applied for a card and deposited his $100 million check into it. With the card in hand, he was finally a rich man. He took a taxi to Bayville Square. Although he had no idea what was going to happen at the dinner that night, as a man he could sense that Snow was under pressure. When a woman felt pressured by other women, it was more or less because they thought their man was not impressive enough. After figuring it out, Kiran decided to give Snow a surprise. He got himself a haircut and picked out a new set of clothes. After dressing up, he was even more handsome than before and looked just like a wealthy young heir. A much manlier one, though. While he was strolling through the streets, numerous beautiful women stopped to stare and even approached him for pictures and autographs as if he were a celebrity. Kiran was calm and poised as ever, and he was even more confident to attend the dinner that evening. Since he had received money from Snow's girlfriends and did not want to embarrass her, he planned to buy some gifts for them in return. To his dismay, he realized he was clueless about women's interests and hobbies. Therefore, he went on a shopping trip in Bayville Square. Eventually, he came across a Chanel women's clothing store. Although he was unfamiliar with the brand, he noticed that the prices were sky-high, so he walked inside. The saleswoman was occupied with several female customers, so no one paid attention to him. He started looking around on his own. Without knowing it, he had made his way over to the lingerie section. A woman was there, holding up a lingerie piece to her body when she came face to face with him. "Pervert!" she screamed. Her screams attracted everyone in the store and even those from outside. Kiran was instantly surrounded. He seethed, indignant at being mistaken for a pervert. The woman glanced at the onlookers. "This guy was peeping on me. Someone call the police." A saleswoman stepped forward and looked Kiran over. Noticing that he was decked out in famous brands, she assumed a polite approach, not daring to treat him with contempt. "Sir, may I know what happened here?" Kiran had been fuming at first, but when he perceived the accusing woman's skin creasing due to her thick layer of foundation, he chuckled. "I came here to shop. I saw this grandma holding up a bra to her body, and before I knew it, she was calling me a pervert." "Grandma?" The crowd was dumbfounded by his words. The woman was 30 years old at most. Although her beauty was somewhat artificial, she was still an attractive young woman. How could he call her a grandma? The woman's anger boiled over. She swung around to face Kiran and hurled the bra in her hand at him. "Are you freaking blind? I'm not even 30 years old?" Kiran dodged, and the bra flopped to the floor. The saleswoman frowned and began to scrutinize Kiran. Some men rented clothes or wore knockoffs to cheat women out of their money or into sleeping with them. She wondered which type Kiran belonged to. Unaware of her thoughts, Kiran stared directly at the woman. "You said you're under 30? He quickly covered his mouth and murmured, "I thought you were 300 years old." Now he was outright calling her an old hag. First, the woman scanned her surroundings furiously for something else to throw at him. The saleswoman stopped her hastily. All the clothes in the store were worth a king's ransom. "How dare you call me old?" the woman sputtered. "I'm not calling you old." "You are old," Kiran stated seriously. "Bullshit," the woman screeched. "The cosmetics I use can even make old people look youthful, not to mention that I'm still young. The cosmetics you use? Tesk. Kiran shook his head. "Must be trash." "Shut up," the woman exploded with indignation and humiliation. "I use cosmetics from Blooming Group. What's more, they're premium products that aren't available for general sale." She puffed up and eyed Kiran haughtily. "For your information, each bottle costs $1 million. Holy crap, is it that expensive?" Someone in the crowd exclaimed. "Blooming Group is the largest cosmetics company in Bayville. All their products cost an arm and a leg. But $1 million is just outrageous." "I've never heard of any cosmetic product that expensive." The onlookers started discussing among themselves. Their voices only boosted the woman's arrogance. "It's one of their cutting-edge products. They don't sell it to the general public, so it's not a matter of how much money you have." She went on as if they were all fools. "I received it from Mr. Marshall himself. When this product is launched and used by everyone, it'll create staggering value and wealth for the company, so I'm not exaggerating when I say it's worth $1 million. In fact, I might be underestimating its potential value." Everyone was flabbergasted. How was this woman related to Blooming Group's Marshall Simmons? How could she receive such special treatment? What's the name of the product? When will it be launched? "Your skin is so clear. I'm so jealous." "Me too. When it goes on sale, I'm going to buy it too." Many onlookers began to flatter her, hoping they could obtain the product in advance. After all, Blooming Group's products were well known in Bayville and the whole state, and the business was gradually spreading its popularity to the entire country too. The woman shot Kiran a disdainful look. Even an old lady can look youthful after using this premium product, let alone a young woman like me. You need to get your eyes checked, boy. The others rounded on Kiran as well. Exactly. Her skin is so smooth and hydrated, it's the kind of skin women would die for. Her skin's so supple and silky. It's like velvet. Yeah, this youngster's obviously up to no good. We should call the police and arrest him. By now, the saleswoman was convinced that Kiran was a rogue and a liar. Kiran remained perfectly calm. He stared at the woman's face for a moment, then burst out laughing. It appears that Marshall Simmons' company might go bankrupt very soon. What did you say? The woman's eyes were practically bulging out of their sockets. You want to die? What makes you think you can say Mr. Marshall's name so casually? How dare you curse Blooming Group? Any of these two accusations can end your entire life. Kiran shook his head helplessly as if she was a brainless idiot. Sure, think whatever you want. I don't care. He turned to the saleswoman. How much do the clothes here cost? Enraged by Kiran's dismissal, the woman stormed up to him. I won't let you leave this place until you explain yourself. Also, I'll get Mr. Marshall to come here and deal with you. Deal with me? Kiran sneered at the woman's stupidity. Let him come then. The woman bristled at his contemptuous attitude. You really have no fear, huh? I do fear your old, sagging face, though, Kiran retorted mercilessly. You... Gnashing her teeth, the woman fished out her phone and dialed Marshall's number. Chapter 153. Mr. Marshall, someone's bullying me. The instant the call was answered, the woman burst into tears. Marshall's scowl deepened. Why was all of this happening today? First, Isabel had called him out of nowhere to give him trouble, and now it was his girlfriend, Lily Dunn. What happened? Marshall asked in annoyance. Thinking that Marshall was furious because he heard her sobbing, Lily immediately grew confident and launched into her story with as much dramatic flair as she could muster. Marshall's face darkened as he listened. He had granted Lily exclusive privilege to use Blooming Group's latest product, which even his wife did not have access to. So he was infuriated that it had been accused of having inferior quality. How dare anyone slander Blooming Group like that? Although he was undoubtedly irked by the unsatisfactory sales statistics displayed before him, his products were by no means of inferior quality. Don't let him leave. I'll be there soon. He slammed the phone down on the table and headed directly to Bayville Square. He would kill anyone who bullied Lily. More importantly, he would kill anyone who slandered his products. Lily was delighted to hear that Marshall was coming. Given his identity, Kiran would be doomed for sure. She was Marshall's girlfriend. Of course, he would take her matters very seriously. Putting away her cell phone, she said smugly, "This is what you get for slandering Blooming Group's products. When Mr. Marshall arrives, you'll be finished." Lily's arrogance immediately garnered the support of the onlookers, especially when they heard that Marshall was on his way. They intended to seek favor with him so they could get access to the product as soon as possible, and so they opened their mouths to lob insults at Kiran. Slander? Kiran snickered. When Marshall Simmons arrives, I'll tell him that Blooming Group is trash to his face. Lily was so outraged she could hardly breathe. The others shut their mouths at once, shocked. Kiran was either a madman or an idiot, otherwise how could he have the audacity to say that? Kiran ignored the crowd of dimwits and turned to the saleswoman. How much does the lingerie here cost? The saleswoman was stunned and forgot to answer. How was he still in the mood to discuss the price of underwear? Kiran grew impatient. Forget it. Just get me one of each color and design and pack them up. One of each? The saleswoman regained her senses and exclaimed. Everyone else at the scene was staggered as well. This was Chanel, not some cheap common brand. Are you sure, sir? The saleswoman struggled to hold in her delight. Do you seriously believe him? He's just bragging. Don't forget that he's just a peeping Tom. Even the most expensive clothes can't hide his true colors. Lily raised her voice to prevent Kiran from capturing everyone's attention. Kiran glanced at the saleswoman. Hold on. The excitement on the saleswoman's face faded away at the possibility that Kiran was a liar. Lily was even more stoked. See, now you know he's bragging. His act's falling apart. The others suspected so as well and could not help but shake their heads in disdain. Get me one piece of each item in here. Kiran gestured to all the clothes in the store. Huh? Everyone was dumbfounded. It was not because the cost was too high. In fact, it was exactly the opposite. Gone was the contempt in the saleswoman's eyes, and in its place was exhilaration and eagerness. Of course, sir. I'll pack them up for you right away. Wait! Lily tried to stop her. Don't fall for his lies, or all your work will be for nothing. Everyone nodded in agreement, the implication being that Kiran did not actually have money. The total amount could very well go up to tens of millions, and the saleswoman hesitated a little. She wanted to secure the sale, but was worried that Kiran could not afford it, so she looked at him questioningly. How much do the pieces I chose cost, roughly? Kiran asked. The total price of the goods we have here is about 50 million. If you buy one piece of each item, 15 million will be enough, the saleswoman said cautiously, silently praying he would not be scared off. Just deduct 16 million from my card. If it's not enough, I'll make up for it. If it goes over the total amount, consider it as your tip. Kiran took out his bank card and handed it to her. There were practically stars in the saleswoman's eyes. Holy crap, this was a rich man in the flesh. A handsome and rich young heir. The onlookers were also taken aback by Kiran's generosity. Even his tip was already $1 million. There were many women who offered themselves as sugar babies to wealthy men, yet still unable to earn $1 million a year. He, on the other hand, spent that amount without batting an eye. This was undoubtedly a man with deep pockets. Lily was unimpressed. Don't listen to him. His card could be empty for all you know. This time the saleswoman ignored her and turned to Kiran respectfully. Sir, if you join our membership, you can get a discount of 10%. Do you think I look like someone who doesn't even have $1 million? Kiran smiled serenely. The saleswoman nearly fell to her knees. She thought to herself, I don't. Can you give all that money to me? The other saleswomen gazed at Kiran with shining eyes that oozed charm, hoping Kiran would notice them. The employees here were all attractive women who longed to meet a rich man and become their sugar baby. For them, even middle-aged or old men would do. Kiran was young, handsome, and rich. If they could become his woman, they would be willing to sleep with him every day. He's just bragging. It'd be hilarious if his card turned out empty, Lily continued to protest. And if it's not, Kiran smirked. If it's not, I'll get on my knees to you. Lily was itching to prove him wrong. She did not believe him at all. Can all of you testify to that? Kiran smiled at the crowd. We can, sir. A few other saleswomen shouted at once. Although the spectators did not respond, they were interested in the bet too. The pin is 6/8, Kiran told the saleswoman. Fighting to hide her ecstasy, she waved the card at Lily in support of Kiran and headed to the register to swipe it. There was the familiar beep of a successful transaction, followed by the sound of printing. When Lily heard this, she blanched, and fear crept into her eyes. The other saleswomen immediately surrounded her to prevent her from breaking her promise and running away. The employee who had processed the payment returned with a bright smile and, with both hands, presented the bill and card to Kiran deferentially. Sir, the payment is complete. Kiran nodded and took it. The saleswoman wheeled around to face Lily, her expression glacial. On your knees! On your knees! The other saleswomen chorused. Lily was stupefied. Chapter 154. Never in Lily's wildest dreams did she think that Kiran would be a true rich man, and an extremely rich one, too. She regretted her actions and began to panic. However, when she remembered that Marshall would be here soon, she looked at the crowd confidently. I'm Blooming Group's CEO, Mr. Marshall's woman. If you lay a hand on me, you'll have to face his anger. Even if he gets angry, you're still not getting out of this. You lost the bet yourself. You should keep your word, the saleswoman said mercilessly. Who dares to bully my woman? Marshall's furious roar came from outside the store. Eeeew. The crowd parted, and all heads whipped around to him. Many of them regarded him with awe. Blooming Group was the largest cosmetics company in Bayville, with a market value of $10 billion. Naturally, its CEO was no ordinary person. When they remembered the new product that was to be launched soon, they grew more deferential. Marshall's livid expression brightened at the crowd's reaction, but it was still grim. Mr. Marshall, you have to help me. Lily broke free of the saleswoman's grasp and ran up to him, sobbing. Marshall's heart ached at the sight of Lily's disheveled clothes and tear-streaked face. and he immediately flared up. "Which one of you bullied my woman?" The saleswomen backed away in alarm. Lily pointed at Kiran, who was standing with his back to Marshall. "That pretty boy right there. He's probably the son of a God-knows-which rich family. He tried to harass me, called me an old woman, slandered your company's products, and even showed off his wealth by buying more than 10 million bucks worth of clothes." Marshall could hardly contain his anger. How dare this imbecile harass his woman? Also, how dare he show off with only 10 million bucks in his pocket? What a reckless fool. He scrutinized Kiran's back coldly. He found this person's figure somewhat familiar, but he did not know anyone with that hairstyle, so he did not dwell too much on it. Kiran did not turn around. He was enraged by what Marshall had said upon his arrival. He had felt pity for Marshall and considered him a filial son when he knelt and begged Kiran to cure his father, hence he had saved the old man. Now, it appeared that he was also another rich man who overestimated his abilities and influence. First Isabel, now Lily. Both were bitches who barked loudly because they had the protection of a powerful person. Kiran crossed out Marshall's name in his heart. "Why don't you turn around, brat? Are you scared now that Mr. Marshall's here?" Lily's arrogance soared when Kiran did not turn around. Marshall regarded Kiran coldly. "I don't care what happened. Apologize to my woman this instant, or this will get very ugly. Do it on your knees," Lily added, recalling their bet. "Apologize," Kiran sneered. "On my knees, too? Are you sure you want to ask for that, Marshall Simmons?" Kiran turned around as he spoke. Marshall was wondering why Kiran's voice sounded so familiar. When Kiran turned around and revealed his face, Marshall's mind went blank. Unaware that he knew Kiran, Lily yelled, "You have to apologize on your knees and also crawl out from this spot or Mr. Marshall will make you—" Smack! An ear-splitting slap cut Lily off mid-sentence. However, the person who had raised his hand to her was not Kiran, but Marshall. She gaped at him in disbelief with a hand over her aching cheek. "Mr. Marshall, did you just hit me?" "Shut up!" Marshall bellowed. "Get on your knees!" Lily was frozen to the spot. Marshall had always showered her with affection and had never beaten her, but he had just raised his hand to her in public. However, when she saw the unbridled rage on his face, she took a step back in fright. "Get on your knees and crawl out," Marshall continued. Lily shuddered and fell to her knees. The onlookers were dumbfounded. "Crawl out. Didn't you hear me?" Marshall lifted his hand again to strike her. Terrified, Lily immediately crawled out like a dog. Kiran had neither gone on his knees nor on all fours. Lily had done that instead. Who was this man? Chapter 155. Marshall ignored Lily and hurriedly stepped forward to speak to Kiran. All of a sudden, he was at a loss for words. To be precise, he was at a loss for how to address him. If he called him Mr. Kiran, he would be recognizing his identity and severing ties with the three big families. If he just called him Kiran, it would be an obvious sign of disrespect. After hesitating for a long while, he said, "I'm sorry. I apologize for Lily's ignorance." Marshall Simmons, a CEO with tens of billions of assets, had slapped his woman, humiliated her, and even bowed down to Kiran in apology. All bystanders were staggered. It was already a rare occasion to have a word with this billionaire CEO, let alone ask him to apologize. "Mr. Marshall, are you seriously apologizing to him?" At the exit, Lily cradled her stinging cheek and exclaimed incredulously. "Shut up!" Marshall roared again. This time he felt like killing her. Realizing that he was truly infuriated, Lily shut her mouth, too frightened to utter another word. Kiran ignored Marshall. The latter had made his priorities clear the moment he had hesitated to address him. He glanced at the saleswoman. "Pack the clothes up and deliver them to Bayville Hotel at 6 o'clock in the evening. After that, wait for my instructions." "Yes, sir," they answered quickly. Kiran made to leave, but Marshall stepped forward and stopped him. "Is something the matter?" Kiran cocked a brow. Without a word, Marshall scribbled out a check for $100 million and handed it to Kiran humbly. "Sir, since you were able to perceive the shortcomings in our cosmetics, would you kindly give us pointers for corrections?" He knew that Kiran possessed excellent medical skills. If Kiran said there was something wrong with the cosmetics, it was because he identified the reason. Marshall himself had spent the entire day staring at his company's numbers, yet still failed to pinpoint the problem. Therefore, he was now willing to spend $100 million to obtain the answer. 100 million? Kiran snickered and glanced at the crowd. Do you guys think that's enough? Hiss! The onlookers inhaled sharply, their eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Was 100 million not enough? Then, how much was enough? Clearly, the amount meant nothing to Kiran. Everyone stared at him in bewilderment. Ignoring Marshall, Kiran turned and strode off. If anyone looked down on him, he would make sure to remind that person that he was way out of their league. Marshall was left standing on the spot with the $100 million check in hand, gawking stupidly. Lily was flabbergasted. After so many years of being with Marshall, this was the first time she saw him so scared and bowing his head to beg for help. She ran up to him and asked curiously, "Mr. Marshall, who is he?" "Kiran York." Marshall's tone was full of distress. "Who's Kiran York?" "The heir." Marshall's face was pale as he forced out the words. "To what?" Lily asked dumbly. "The heir to the York family, once the greatest family in Bayville, Kiran York." The instant the words left Marshall's lips, he deflated as if all his energy had been drained. Blooming Group was currently at its peak of development, but from now on it would go downhill. No matter which side, Kiran or the three big families, won, there was no place left for him in Bayville. This was exactly what was going to happen. Kiran had just decided that the next step for Peace Pharmaceuticals would be to produce cosmetics, expanding its business from Bayville to the state and the country. He had even decided on the CEO. It would be Rain. Lily and the people present had no idea who Kiran was. Nevertheless, they were astounded to hear the name of the York family, once the greatest family in Bayville. 100 million was indeed not enough. Kiran had full reason to be arrogant. They gazed after him, suddenly struck by the realization of how terrifying ignorance could be. However, Kiran had put all of this behind him. At 5 o'clock in the evening, he showed up at Bayville Hotel on time. Chapter 156. Kiran tapped on the button to answer the call. "Where the hell have you been?" Snow snapped. "I'm not a live-in son-in-law, you know," Kiran shot back. "Besides, I'm not a man whose life revolves around my wife. I have my own career." "You—" On the other end, Snow gripped her phone furiously. Kiran was so petty for always having a comeback ready. The dinner at Bayville Hotel's canceled. "You don't have to go there anymore." "Canceled?" Kiran glanced down at his new clothes, his annoyance flaring. "What a wasteful woman. I forgot to make a reservation, and there are no more private rooms, so we need to change the venue," Snow explained in irritation. "Women can never get things done properly." Kiran hung up abruptly with a click. Snow stamped her foot indignantly. What did he mean, women could never get things done properly? She had never heard of men succeeding at what they did. They always surrendered in the end. Stupid jerk. Snow grumbled and started making calls to secure another venue. Kiran strode into Bayville Hotel's lobby. When the receptionist caught sight of Kiran, her face instantly lit up with a smile, and she stood up so fast that she almost tripped over herself in excitement. She was squealing inside. She had never seen such a handsome man before. This was not the receptionist who had been on duty when Kiran had arrived for the conference in the afternoon. Moreover, he had changed his hairstyle and clothes, so he looked like a completely different person. "Sir, how may I help you?" The receptionist was so enthusiastic that she could barely form a coherent sentence, and she squeezed her legs together in anticipation. "I'm inviting friends to dinner tonight, and I need a large private room. The larger, the better. Do you have any available?" Kiran asked coolly. "Let me check for you." The receptionist immediately turned around to check. Kiran waited calmly and confidently. After 5 minutes, the receptionist offered Kiran an apologetic and disappointed look. "Sir, I'm so sorry. All our private rooms have been booked." Kiran arched an eyebrow. So it was true. "Is there anything that can be done?" "Please hold on. Let me ask if any of them are willing to cancel." After several calls, the receptionist was dejected to find that none of the guests were willing to cancel. She desperately wanted to do something for Kiran, but there was nothing she could do. "Never mind. I'll think of something else." Kiran stroked his chin, contemplating another solution. Just then, a figure appeared beside him. Catching the familiar whiff of violet perfume, he glanced up and found Yvonne standing next to him. He was surprised. "Why are you here? Why can't I?" Yvonne's pale face was devoid of expression. "Forget it." Kiran spun around to leave. He decided that he should avoid contact with this woman. Her frail, sickly image already aroused pity. He might not be able to bring himself to kill her if he got too close to her. The entire Quinn family deserved to die. This could not be changed. Yvonne was no exception. "Miss, cancel my Golden Splendor private room reservation for tonight. You may open it to the public," Yvonne said to the receptionist. The latter gaped at her in astonishment. She opened her mouth to exclaim, but was hushed by Yvonne's icy stare. She nodded quickly. "All right, Miss Yvonne." Kiran had already reached the exit when he happened to hear this, and he glanced over his shoulder at the receptionist. "Is that room taken? If not, I'll take it." The receptionist looked at Yvonne instinctively. Yvonne inclined her head slightly. The receptionist immediately nodded. "Very well, sir. What time would you like to use the room?" 6 o'clock. Kiran was delighted. "No problem." The receptionist keyed in the information right away. Kiran took out his phone and called Snow. Snow, who was frowning over her inability to find a suitable hotel, answered the call irritably. "What? I've booked a private room at Bayville Hotel's Golden Splendor. Same time," was all Kiran said before hanging up. How did he do it? Weren't all the private rooms unavailable? Wait! Golden Splendor's private rooms were said to be closed to the public, so how did Kiran manage to snag one? His reputation was impressive. She wanted to call him to confirm, but found that he had already informed everyone in Omnipotent Group. Snow was dubious about the whole situation, but decided to leave the questions for later. Yvonne glanced at Kiran. "Snow Xander's lucky to have you," Kiran smiled. "That's a personal matter between me and her." Yvonne nodded. "Enjoy your dinner." With that, she turned and left. Kiran gazed after her with great curiosity. He then followed an employee specially tasked to usher him upstairs. Meanwhile, Yvonne retraced her steps to the front desk. "Their dinner tonight at Golden Splendor is free of charge. If anyone asks, just tell them it's my treat." "Yes, Ms. Yvonne," the receptionist answered. No one in Bayville knew that the real person in charge of the Bayville Hotel was Yvonne herself. She had happened to hear Kiran requesting a private room, so she had made an exception and offered him a room that was not open to the public. Her lips curved into a rare smile. She had all the time in the world to play this game, and she was certain her kindness would soften Kiran's cold heart one day. Kiran entered the private room. It had an area of 40 square meters and could accommodate a dining table for about 30 people, which was more than enough. The decor was magnificent, the soundproofing was excellent, and it was also equipped with speakers and lighting equipment, just like a small karaoke room. Kiran was very satisfied. This was truly a rare catch. After giving a brief introduction, the employee turned to leave. "Hold on, miss," Kiran called out. The employee paused in surprise, then whirled around to him in delight. She squirmed in place coyly, hoping she was alluring enough to capture the eye of this handsome young man. "If someone from the Chanel store shows up to deliver clothes later, tell them to leave the stuff here," Kiran said. The employee was a little crestfallen by his simple request, but she still nodded respectfully. "Let me know if there's anything else you need, sir." Kiran nodded, and she left. She yearned to capture Kiran's eye. At the same time, she wondered why this private room had been lent to him. Kiran sat down and pulled out his phone to pass the time. Just then, he received a video call from Serena. Despite his natural aversion to this madwoman, he tapped on the accept button. "What's up, Mr. Kiran? There's going to be a lot of hot women at dinner tonight, so try not to be too dazzled," Serena laughed teasingly. Kiran was exasperated. "As long as they're not as crazy as you." He. "Oh, so you've fallen for my craziness, Mr. Kiran," Serena said nonchalantly. "If there's nothing important, I'm hanging up." Kiran rolled his eyes. "I want to get the deets on some juicy gossip I just heard," Serena explained hastily. Chapter 157. "What gossip?" Kiran asked cautiously. He always kept his guard up when this madwoman was involved. "What's going on between you and Bayville Hotel's owner?" Serena wanted to know. "Who's Bayville Hotel's owner?" Kiran was puzzled. "I don't know them." "Then, how did you snag a private room at Golden Splendor? That restaurant's not open to the public." "Even Mr. Xander has never been there for meals," Serena said inquisitively. Kiran was startled. In that case, how come Yvonne had access to it? However, he decided to ignore the matter for now and said impatiently, "Why do you care? Just be glad that you have a place for dinner." "Okay, I'll do anything you ask of me, Mr. Kiran," Serena giggled. "Just tell me any position you want and I." The repeated bleep signified that Kiran had hung up. Instead of getting angry, Serena was gleeful that she had one-upped Kiran again. She was certain that she would be able to conquer him one day. Kiran was aggravated. Serena was already enough trouble. What if the other women in Omnipotent Group were as bad as her? It was even more embarrassing when he knew none of them personally, so he decided to go out first and come back later. He stood up and made his way to the door. He opened it and was about to walk out when he felt something collide with his body. It did not hurt, but it was unexpectedly bouncy. He glanced down and saw a woman standing in front of him. She was a little over 1.65 meters tall, much shorter than Snow and Serena. However, what astounded him was her baby face and the weapon that had hit him. Was this what they called the face of an angel and the body of a goddess? The woman's eyes widened and lit up when she saw him. Her gaze slid to the name of the private room, and after confirming that it was Golden Splendor, she flashed him a radiant smile and asked, "Are you Snow's husband?" Kiran nodded. "Yes, my name's Kiran York." "Kiran York?" She repeated his name as she scanned him from head to toe. She even circled him to get a complete view, which made him a little uneasy. "Not bad," she muttered to herself, then said excitedly, "Are you Snow's gigolo? How much did she pay you?" Kiran's temper flared. What was going on in this woman's head? Had she peered at every inch of his body only to conclude that he was a gigolo? He felt like yelling at her to get her eyes checked. How in the world did he look like a kept man? However, at the sight of her childlike shining eyes, and remembering their group of girlfriends had showered him with money, he eventually stopped the string of insults from spewing out of his mouth. "My name's Crystal Lynn." The woman finally remembered to introduce herself. "Nice to meet you, Crystal." Kiran nodded. "Go on inside and have a seat. I need to head out for a bit." With that, he made to leave. "Where are you going? I'm your guest." Crystal gazed at him innocently. "I'm going to order our food." Kiran offered an excuse. "You don't have to do that. I've already placed an order," said Crystal. "You have?" Kiran was taken aback. "What about the others? I've placed orders for all of them. We come here a lot, so we know what's good and what's not, and we're very familiar with each other's preferences," Crystal explained. Kiran nodded and tried to think of other reasons to excuse himself. Suddenly, Crystal said, "I'm just surprised Snow likes keeping gigolos." I didn't know she was into that. Kiran rolled his eyes. What the hell was this woman saying? Did the size of her bust contradict the size of her brain? "Crystal, are you using that innocent face of yours to flirt with hot men again?" Just then, a slender woman with foxy features approached them. This woman was definitely what people called a vixen. Chapter 158. Compared with Serena's wildness, this woman oozed natural sex appeal. "What are you talking about, Starly? I'm an innocent woman." Crystal eyed her body and asked suggestively, "So? Did you manage to catch that director's eye and do the deed with him?" "What the hell, bitch? I'm not a slut like you," Starly screeched and lunged at her. "I'm gonna crush those melons of yours." Kiran watched the scandalous scene unfold before him. It was an attack more ruthless than a man's. "Save me, Kiran." Crystal turned around and ran behind him. She threw her arms around his waist and pressed her body up against him, using him as a shield. Kiran was flabbergasted by the sensation of her breast squashed against his back. However, he acutely noticed a strange look in Starly's eyes. She was sending some sort of signal to Crystal behind him. Kiran arched an eyebrow in realization. These two women were putting on a show to test him. Was this Snow's plan? Did she really have such a low opinion of him? With a light shake, he broke free of Crystal's hold and dodged to the side. "Why don't you two head inside? I need to go out for a bit." "No, Kiran." This time, both Crystal and Starly dashed forward and grabbed his arms. Naturally, these two women were unable to restrict him. Just when he was about to make his escape, he spotted Snow heading over with 6 women, including Serena. "Damn. I didn't know you were hiding a hot guy like that, Snow. I'm so jealous." "Snow, do you mind sharing your your husband?" When the women caught sight of Kiran, they rushed up to him like a mob of fangirls and blocked his path, chattering incessantly. Snow was stunned to see Kiran's new hairstyle and clothes, too. He looked so much more handsome and manlier than all the young hunks out there. She could feel her heart beating faster. Serena's eyes were brimming with wild delight, as if they were saying, "That's my man." Kiran was frustrated to find himself surrounded by a group of screaming women, like a flower discovered by bees. In one swift movement, he darted out of their siege and appeared beside Snow, pulling her into his arms. "Honey, you're finally here." The implication was that he had almost been devoured by a pack of female wolves. Snow rolled her eyes at him with feigned haughtiness. "Are you saying I'm late?" Kiran wanted to respond inwardly, "Why are all your girlfriends perverts?" But instead he said, "No, I'm just hungry." "Are you hungry, Kiran? I have food here." One of the women beamed at him. Kiran turned his head away hastily. The woman who had spoken was clearly a breastfeeding mother who had just given birth. "Hey now, control yourselves. Don't act like you've never seen a man in your life." Serena came to the rescue. "You'd better watch out for Serena, Snow. I think she wants to seduce your husband," Starley informed with a smile. "Anyone who's interested can go ahead and take him." "I don't want him," Snow scoffed half-heartedly. "Then I'll take him." Crystal got ready to hurl herself at Kiran. Immediately, Kiran pushed Snow in front of him in mock terror, setting off more snorts of laughter. He did not try to leave anymore and entered the private room with them. The women had not expected Kiran to be so good-looking at all, and the single ones instinctively grew conscious of their behavior so they could leave a good impression on him. Everyone brought out their gifts to express their good wishes for Snow and Kiran. Snow was a little embarrassed. Kiran had already received money from them, and now he was treating them to dinner and accepting their gifts, but she had not prepared anything at all. Kiran accepted everything without hesitation. At this moment there was a knock on the door of the private room. Chapter 159. Then the door of the room swung open. 4 women in white skirts, see-through stockings, and white stilettos stood at the door with 4 carts behind them. Snow and the others were stunned. They had no idea who those girls were as they were not part of their friend group. "Hello, Mr. York." The 4 women simultaneously bowed to Kiran while greeting him. Their perfectly coordinated movements made everyone wonder how many times they must have practiced. Even the group of friends could not hide their shock. "Woo." All the women in the room directed their gaze toward Kiran, and they all had one question in their minds. Were they beautiful enough for him? Kiran recognized them as saleswomen from the Chanel store, so he beckoned them. "Come in." "Yes, Mr. York." The 4 pushed the carts in. After spotting the Chanel logo on the boxes, Snow and the others were shocked. Kiran looked at them. "Since this is our first meeting, I wasn't sure what you all liked, so I picked out various styles and colors of Chanel clothes as gifts. You can just pick out what you like." Wow. All the women in the room widened their eyes and covered their mouths. Their exaggerated expressions made them look like they wanted to hug and kiss Kiran. "Kiran, I love you." Serena was the first to lose her mind. "Kiran, I love you too." Starley almost melted into Kiran's arms. "I'm married." Kiran immediately held on to Snow tightly. "Ha ha." Everyone laughed and shouted in unison, "Kiran, we all love you." They were mouthing, "I love you, Kiran," but they were already swarming toward the clothes. Women were just naturally drawn to clothes, and even handsome guys had to give way to pretty clothes. Snow looked at Kiran's handsome face as he hugged her, and a smile appeared on her face. She could tell that he got his hair cut for this, and he even bought brand new clothes as a surprise gift, showing off his generosity and thoughtfulness. She thought to herself, he would be such a good man if he did not make noise about getting a divorce every day. Immediately after that thought, she scoffed, "What a jerk. He just knows how to piss me off." "Honey, if you're embarrassed to get one, do you want me to get it for you?" Kiran glanced at her chest, implying that he knew her measurements. Snow hurriedly covered herself up and gestured that she was going to poke Kiran's eyes out before running over to the others. The 4 saleswomen smiled at Kiran. They originally thought that if all of them dressed up, they might be able to seduce Kiran, but upon seeing the beautiful women in the room, they lost hope. One of the saleswomen went over to Kiran with the bill and politely handed it to him with both hands. "Mr. York, this is a $2 million check for the clothes you bought." The women who were busy choosing clothes stopped in their tracks and turned to look at Kiran in shock. He actually spent $2 million picking out clothes for them. That man was rich. Filthy rich. They used to think that Kiran was a kept man who just used Snow's money. Right now, they were certain that was not the case. He was actually rich. Snow was even more moved, but she was also angry that the jerk kept doing things to sway her. Her total shopping expenditure over the years did not even come up to $2 million. In a single day, Kiran spent the same amount she had spent over the span of 20 years. When they get home, she must make him get down on his knees. What a waste of money! It could have been their kid's college fund. Her mind was filled with both happy and maddening thoughts at the same time. Kiran calmly looked at the saleswoman. "Why are you giving this to me? Mr. Marshall of Blooming Group paid for you and he asked us to send the check to you." Chapter 160. The saleswoman explained. "Mr. Marshall paid the bill?" Starley put her hands over her mouth as lustful feelings showed up on her foxy face. She had always wanted to sign an endorsement contract with the Blooming Group to boost her popularity and earn big bucks. However, she had not even had the chance to meet Mr. Marshall. What was more surprising was that Marshall actually licked Kiran's boots himself. What a mysterious and powerful man. It was as if a gold digger had just found her knight in shining armor. Just one look from Kiran would bring her to her knees. He was young, handsome, rich. Most importantly, he had status. Kiran was a lady killer. He was not aware that these arrogant women were eyeing him now, and they were even starting to become envious of Snow. "Ha!" Kiran scoffed at the saleswoman. "Give it back to him!" He rejected it. As of right now, no words could describe how shocked Crystal, Starley, and the others were. With that amount of money, he could have any woman he wanted in Bayville. Yet, Kiran turned it down. Was he putting on a show? $2 million is worth nothing to me. I won't even accept $10 million from him. What makes you think I would accept his?" Kiran spoke. Crystal and the others were dying to ask Snow where she found a husband who was so filthy stinking rich. None of the young heirs of Bayville were that rich. Seeing as the four saleswomen were put in a difficult position, Snow immediately walked over and looked at Kiran. "What's going on? Marshall is just trying to suck up to me," Kiran said nonchalantly. Snow wanted to persuade Kiran. "Marshall is actually— Does your husband need other people's approval?" Kiran interrupted her. He glared at the entrance. "He used to look down on me, but now I'm way out of his league. I don't associate with criminals." Gasp. Starley and the others could not help but take a deep breath. Criminal. In Kiran's eyes, Marshall, who had a net worth of $100 million, was a criminal. Who was this guy? Could he be the young master of an influential family? They all looked at Kiran, visibly confused. Their minds were filled with even more questions. Those women would willingly go on their knees if Kiran were to ever profess his love for them. Not just because of Kiran's dashing looks, but also his manliness. The four saleswomen were shaken to their core, so Snow gestured for them to go. "Go and take the check back to Marshall." "Yes, ma'am." The saleswomen turned to leave. However, they could not stop thinking about what Marshall said after Kiran left. Mr. Kiran was once the young master of the York family, Bayville's most powerful family. Kiran York. Mr. Kiran. From now on, his name was engraved in their minds. Once they left, Kiran's expression was back to normal. He looked at the women picking out clothes and touched his nose before placing his hand on Snow. "Honey, can you get one in your size and another in a bigger size?" "What do you mean?" Snow asked in surprise. "Kiran's going to get you pregnant," Serena explained smilingly. "What about me, Kiran?" "Me too. Don't forget me," the women clamored. Snow put her palm to her forehead. That bastard. One moment, he was like a king. The next, he was like a hooligan. Kiran laughed. They said that to lighten up the atmosphere as it was too tense earlier. How were they supposed to enjoy their meal like that? On the contrary, Kiran did not think much of those women, including Snow. All he had on his mind was the York family's revenge. Within the next 7 days, he had to provoke the 3 major families and speed up the development of his business. After that, let the show begin. "Sir, would you like us to serve the food now?" the waiter came in and asked. "One moment, please," Kiran said suddenly.